All right, cool. So it's gonna be a pretty simple one today. Like we're gonna go super short and just talk about some inequalities here. Okay. So the deal with inequalities is fairly simple. Not all of them are gonna be like this. Again, this is just an intro to the basics of inequalities, and inequalities get significantly harder than this, significantly easier than this, but this is just a general mid-range example, one that if you're using our Algebra 1 book, you'll see a lot. So I'm going to go with a certain set of steps that you can take. Now, you don't always have to take these steps. There are sometimes better ways to do this. But if you're just not sure what you're doing, this would be a good rule of thumb to go ahead and go by, at least for our textbook. So, step one, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and see if we can't get rid of any distribution. Okay, so remember, distribution is when we have a number outside of parentheses. So you'll notice here we have a number outside of this parentheses, so that's at 3. All right, and so we'd want to distribute it to the x and the negative 4. And remember, distribute means to multiply or divide, but we're going to multiply here. So 3 times x gives us 3x, and then 3 times negative 4 gives us negative 12. Everything else is going to come down, so our greater than sign is just going to come down. Our x is going to come down. Our 2 is going to come down. And remember, it's a positive 2. All right. So step 1, you want to go ahead and distribute. That's typically the easiest way to start. Next, step 2, you're going to want to combine like terms. Okay. So combine like terms. There we go. Typically, you want to get your x's both to one side of this and your things without x's to the other side. So again, you want, just regular numbers on one side and then the x's on the other side. You want to separate them as best you can. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to subtract this x. Okay. So if I subtract the x, x minus x is going to cancel out. 3x minus x, so 3x minus 1x gives me 2x's left over. Bring down your minus 12. The greater than sign, and then remember those canceled out, so you've just got a plus 2 over here, which you don't need to write. Plus 2, sorry about that. There you go. And so here we're going to want to, again, combine like terms. So you'll notice this doesn't have a letter, and neither does this. So we don't have variables, so let's go ahead and combine them. Let's add 12 to both sides. Okay. And move this up a little bit. These will cancel out, so 12 minus 12, 0. 2x is now, again, bring down your greater than sign. And then 2 plus 12 should give you 14. From here, your problem's pretty easy to follow out. You've got a 2 times x, so the last step, so step 3. Isolate the variable. Normally this is going to be done through division. Usually division. At least in this textbook, it's usually going to be division at the last step. Doesn't always have to be, but typically it is. So again, to isolate the variable, we need to get rid of that 2. So we're just going to take, and I'm rewriting the problem, you're going to divide by 2 on both sides. You'll get x is over here, bring down your greater than sign, and then 14 divided by 2 is, oh, sorry, you didn't see that. So again, the 2's cancel out. You'll just get x, bring down your greater than sign, and then 14 divided by 2 simplifies to 7. Okay, so let me go ahead and get all of that on screen for you, but that's basically inequalities. Those 3 steps ought to be enough to get you through. All right, and so that's that whole thing. Feel free to pause here and work on it. There is only one more thing that came up later on that you could possibly see. It shouldn't be too big a deal, but we'll go ahead and check it out anyway. Just remember, there is one rule. There is one rule that, again, you can go back, rewind just a couple of seconds, and then pause. But remember, there's a new rule when we multiply or divide both sides by a negative. And remember, this is both sides of an inequality. Can't really flip an equal sign around, it doesn't do anything, but both sides of an inequality by a negative number. I'm going to shorten that to neg. All right, negative number. We have to flip the sign. Okay, so much like our last problem, if I go ahead and just take it, so I'm going to take the same problem here, 3 times x minus 4 greater than x plus 2. We're going to do the same exact thing, except we're going to change this to a negative. So from here, we're still going to distribute. So negative 3 is still going to distribute into both of these. Negative 3x plus 12 greater than x plus 2. We're still going to combine like terms, so we're still going to subtract the x on both sides. You get negative 4x. You're still going to subtract 12. Sorry, earlier that was a little bit different, but these will cancel, these will cancel. 2 minus 12 is negative 10, and then don't forget your sign is still there. Okay, so this is still basic. We still followed the same steps, and you notice that I did this much quicker than before, so if you need it step by step, just go back a little bit in the video, but this is just me doing all the steps kind of at once. So I know it seems like a lot, like it seems like 3, 4, 5 steps, but you can really mix most of these steps together. So let's go ahead and finish this problem. So again, you have to isolate the x. Remember, that's step 3, and it's normally by division. In this case, that's no different, so we have to divide by a negative 4. But you'll notice that now we divided on both sides of this sign by a negative. Because of that, this sign is going to flip around. Whichever way it's facing, it's going to flip around now. Okay? So instead of pointing here to the right, we're going to flip it over. Instead of being greater than, it's going to become less than. In which case, now we just finish our problem. Those 4s will cancel out. You're just left with an x. And over here, you've got 10 over 4. Remember, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And the last step here, I guess, if you want to add a fourth step, so fourth step. This step doesn't always come into play. Sometimes it'll just be simple and you don't really need to do anything. But if it's not simplified, go ahead and simplify. Okay? So 10 over 4, 2 goes in both 10 and 4. Let's divide both the top and the bottom by 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And then 4 divided by 2 is 2. Alright, let me go ahead and get that all on one page as well. There we go. I guess I should just get the work on one page. One sec. There you go. Okay, so that's that example problem where you had to flip the sign. You'll notice that the only real big step change is right here, where we flip the signs around. Okay, and it's just because we divided both sides by a negative sign. Same thing would have happened if we multiplied both sides by a negative. Really makes no difference, but you do have to flip the sign. Okay? That's pretty much it for inequalities as far as we've gotten. I'll do another review video once we get a little bit further in the text, but for now, this is the intro. Just for the record, guys, so what I'm going to introduce to you guys in just a second is something that has to do with equations and inequalities and everything else, but it doesn't have anything to do with the chapter. So for those of you that this makes sense to, practice your work, go in your textbook, do your homework, and ignore what I'm about to do. But for those that are just having trouble and maybe you get this or maybe you're okay with hearing something else, just keep in mind. So this next part of the video has nothing to do with it's not something that we've done really in class. I just want to change your thinking if I can. Okay, so you can ignore this if you just need to get your homework done. But when you're solving an equation, there's something kind of important to keep in mind. So basic equation, something like this, x plus 2 equals 5. Okay, really, really basic equation. And every time we do this, you know that when solving an equation, so solving equations, you always do the opposite. Okay, so do the opposite in order to cancel out things, to cancel crap out. Alright, do the opposite in order to cancel crap out. Pretty simple idea. So we have a plus 2 here, so you want to do the opposite. And then, you know, the 2's cancel out, x equals 5 minus 2 is 3. Now, one thing that people always get thrown off by is that they're not sure what order it has to be done. So you get a problem like this. 3x plus 2 equals, I don't know, 11. Okay, so now you get a problem like this, and maybe you remember that you just want to subtract 2 here on both sides and you're good, or maybe your first step is that you want to divide by 3. Now, this is the part that confuses some students because they're like, well, that is 3 times x, so I want to divide by 3. That is plus 2, so I want to subtract 2. How do I know which one to do first? Which one is better? So it doesn't exactly matter what order that you do things in. In this case, subtracting the 2 would be a lot easier, and you would know that from experience if you've done it the other way. But let's go ahead and we're going to deal with this one first. So the order doesn't matter, but there is something you have to remember. When you decide to divide by 3, remember I said that you have to, when you solve equations, do opposite to cancel crap out, but you have to do the opposite to both sides, in order to cancel crap out. Okay, so you have to do the opposite to both sides, and both sides of an equation means the whole thing. So this is a side of an equation because you've got that equal sign there, so that's a whole side, and that's a whole side. So whenever I decide to do something, like realistically this one here, so I'm going to create another little example area over here. You've got x plus 2 equals 5. And it's not that you're putting that like minus 2 right down here, okay? So if that confuses you, this vertical layout, write your problems horizontally. Leave yourself a lot more space. So I'm going to write x plus 2 equals 5. And I'm just going to space out a little bit because remember, what you're doing is you're subtracting 2, right? So don't think of it as like, oh, I got to line it up underneath like that, because a lot of kids get confused and don't know where to line it up. Don't do that. If that's really confusing to you, then do it horizontally. So you're going to subtract 2. That's your decision. You know that's what you have to do. Go ahead and put parentheses around each side and then put minus 2 after each of them. Oh, kind of running out of room there, but that's a minus 2. Okay, so I should have left myself a little bit more room, and you'll notice it takes a little more space this way, but still, so you're going to subtract 2 from both sides. From here now, this is kind of an interesting problem because all you have to do is get rid of the parentheses, so x plus 2 minus 2 equals 5 minus 2. Now, you know that you can't do x minus 2 because that's not like terms, so we can't do anything about that. But you can do 2 minus 2, which is just 0, and you can write it, but it doesn't really matter if you do. Okay, and then over here, 5 minus 2 is 3. The same thing applies over here. So if you're confused, like, I don't know if I should divide the 3 or subtract the 2 first, well, let's pretend that we want to divide the 3. Okay? If you want to divide the 3, and it does make this problem harder to do so, okay? I'm going to do it the easy way in a second, but if you wanted to divide the 3, like let's say you just didn't know where to start, remember, you have to put your things in parentheses, and then divide both sides by 3. So let's play horizontally. Divide by 3. Divide by 3. Okay? Now that you have a parentheses and a number outside of it, you know you have to distribute. You have to divide that by 3 and that by 3. Remember, distributing, which is annoying because what's going to happen is 3x divided by 3, that works out fine. 3x divided by 3, that's good. But now you have to remember you have to do it to the 2 as well. 2 divided by 3 equals 11 divided by 3. And now this looks like a really, really ugly problem. But remember, your 3's cancel out. X plus 2 over 3 equals 11 over 3. Okay? And so every time we've had x plus or minus something, we did the opposite. So instead of plus 2 over 3, we're going to subtract 2 over 3. And again, we're going to do it horizontally. So I'm going to space this out again. Okay, put parentheses, minus 2 over 3, minus 2 over 3, minus 2 over 3. And this isn't really all that bad because what is 2/3 minus 2/3? You should notice that they're the same thing. And if I ask you 1 minus 1, you say 0. 10 minus 10, 0. 2/3 minus 2/3, 0. So you just end up with x equals, and then now 11 over 3 minus 2 over 3, 11 minus 2 is 9 over 3. And then simplify your answer. X equals 9 divided by 3 is just 3. So you'll notice that if you decided to divide by 3 first, you can do it. It's just long. If I had done this problem the way that I recommend, equals 11, and we just subtract 2. Okay, so subtract 2 from both sides. 3x equals 9. Divide by 3 on both sides. X equals 3. So you'll notice we end up with the same answer. It's significantly shorter over here on the right than it is on the left. Okay, it's a lot shorter, but it's not really that big a deal because you'll end up with the right answer no matter what. What I'm trying to say is that if you're getting confused as to how to start, just understand that you do the opposite to both sides in order to cancel crap out. So if it helps you at all, go ahead and write your problems horizontally. So don't write the, don't write the -2 underneath here and the -2 underneath here, because maybe what you want to do is you want to -2 over here, and then you're like, well, this is x -2, and then that's like -2x. Well, that's not possible. You can't subtract those because they're not like terms. But if the whole vertical lining up thing is confusing you, then go ahead and do it horizontally. Makes no difference. Same problem. Okay, guys? So that's all for today. We're going to go ahead and cover more things. Once we get further in class, and once we get closer to the test, I'll make sure to record more reviews for this. But right now, this is just an introduction to your inequalities. Have a good weekend, guys, and have a good MLK day. I will talk to you guys later. Ciao.